Cleaning up battlefields is a tricky business. You've got looters, scavengers, and vengeful spirits. But you can't leave the bodies to rot by themselves. The roads must be open for trade to continue or the whole realm starves. And it's very unsightly. What will the neighboring countries think? What have I told you? There was a solution to your corpse-filled fields. May I introduce the one, the only, Corpse Roomba! Welcome back to a Compendium of Monsters. It's Cadaver Collector Week. Before we continue, pound that subscribe button and remember to bring out your dead. Or don't, but Corpse Roomba will find them. Cadaver Collectors are challenge level 14, and unlike petulant 14-year-olds, Cadaver Collectors actually know something. These large constructs have an armor class of 17, average hit points of 189, a speed of 30 feet, and dark vision out to 60 feet. Cadaver Collectors understand all languages. The only shame is that Cadaver Collectors can't speak. Why allow it to understand all languages and then not let it speak? The short answer is Cadaver Collectors can be summoned, and we'll talk about that later. Cadaver Collectors don't need no stinking resistances. They are immune to necrotic damage, poison damage, psychic damage, non-magical, non-adamantine weapon damage, and the following conditions: charmed, exhausted, frightened, paralyzed, petrified, and poisoned. Cadaver Collectors have the magic resistance ability because, come on, if you think you're gonna spam spells on a corpse stealer from Acheron, you've got another thing coming. Magic resistance grants Cadaver Collectors advantage on saving throws against all spells and magical effects. Your magic is weak, and so are you. For its other ability, a Cadaver Collector can summon specters. With a recharge duration of a long or short rest, a Cadaver Collector can summon up to 6 specters to aid it in combat, because that's exactly what you wanted during your showdown with a dangerous body collecting machine. More combatants! Why didn't I think of that? None of the summoned specters are affected by the sunlight sensitivity detriment and remain until either they are killed or the Cadaver Collector is destroyed. This ability is contentious not because it summons the spirits of the dead, but because DMs can't agree on when they should use it. Look, if your players are superstitious in real life, have the Cadaver Collector open with summoned specters. If your players and their characters are overconfident and quickly approaching victory, the specters may provide an upset to their vision of victory. Definitely make sure to use the bonus action, but use it in a way that's fun and memorable for your party. Cadaver Collectors have a basic multi-attack that allows them to make 2 slam attacks with their massive meat tenderizers. Each slam attack deals an average of 18 bludgeoning damage and an average of 16 necrotic damage. If you're unlucky, you could get caught in a Cadaver Collector's paralyzing breath. Not comparable to the worst halitosis you've ever smelled, Paralyzing Breath has a 1/3 chance to recharge each round, affects creatures caught in a 30-foot cone, and forces each to make a Constitution saving throw. If we use the Adjudicating Areas of Effect table from the Dungeon Master's Guide, a cone effect affects the maximum number of creatures equal to its size divided by 10, in this case, 3. Any creatures who fail their saving throw are paralyzed for 1 minute, but can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of their turns. For the uninitiated, paralysis does 2 awful things. First, all attacks against a paralyzed creature have advantage. Second, any attacks that hit the paralyzed creature inflict critical damage. Against a paralyzed target, a Cadaver Collector could very feasibly deal an average of 136 damage in a single turn. If that wasn't enough to convince you to be very careful with Cadaver Collectors, please bear in mind that there is no immunity to Paralyzing Breath. Even if a creature saves against 1 Paralyzing Breath, it will still have to make additional Constitution saving throws as the battle continues. While Cadaver Collectors are a force to be reckoned with in 5th edition, Cadaver Collectors from 3.5 are absolute f***ing monsters. Cadaver Collectors used to be able to use their stacked corpses as armor. Each corpse up to 5 would increase a Cadaver Collector's armor class by 2 points. But the most interesting part of 3.5 Cadaver Collectors is their man-fishing action. Not at all related to catfishing, man-fishing allows a Cadaver Collector to launch a harpoon at a distant enemy and reel them in. After reeling in their catch, a Cadaver Collector can then impale the creature on its back, dealing damage for the initial thwonk, and each time the Cadaver Collector moves. Each time it moves! If that isn't enough incentive to hurry your successful reflex save, a Cadaver Collector can also electrify itself and deal damage to any impaled or grappled creatures. What a mess! If you're a DM and are ever looking to spice up an encounter with a Cadaver Collector, seriously consider adding some 3.5 edition flair. Cadaver Collectors are native to a lower plane known as Acheron. Acheron is made up of 4 layers of floating blocks where soldiers slain in battle fight in endless wars that restart at the beginning of each day. It's really the perfect place for body-collecting cyborgs to reside. However, Cadaver Collectors can be summoned from Acheron to any plane so long as one of the following criteria are met. There is an imminent battle, there is a battle in progress, or a battle has finished and corpses are available. Their description alleges Cadaver Collectors can be summoned by a faction with the expectation the Cadaver Collectors will aid said faction, but I believe this goes against a cadaver collector's fundamental purpose. It collects bodies. It doesn't care about your side, and it's going to fight whatever it wants to create corpses. Also, cadaver collectors can't be charmed. Why would they serve anyone if they can't be charmed? Happily, or unhappily depending, if a cadaver collector's summoner meets a sticky end before sending a cadaver back to Acheron, the cadaver collector can spend upwards of hundreds of years wandering whatever plane it was summoned to until it finds a way back to Acheron. Are you thinking of fighting a cadaver collector? Why not offer to banish it back home? It can understand you and has the wisdom to appreciate your help, though it's not very smart, so watch out for that. I often find the real-life inspiration behind creatures in Dungeons & Dragons to be nearly as fascinating as the creatures themselves. In this instance, I have done a bit of research and discovered a man named Gregor Nagel, who was a janitor at the University of Michigan's School of Medicine. Sounds like we're about to get into some true crime right? Surprisingly, no, or at least, not to my knowledge. Gregor Nagel spent numerous hours aiding a professor named Corridon Laford, who stayed up late at night practicing dissections and taught as he practiced. Gregor's anatomical knowledge became well known by the students, who were said to have asked him for help when they got stuck. However, coming by fresh dissection materials in the late 19th century, early 20th century was difficult. Some universities actually robbed graves, and townspeople formed into angry mobs that, perhaps reasonably, stormed medical schools to reclaim the bodies of their loved ones. The person in charge of procuring bodies for the university put out a paper stating no bodies in Ann Arbor would be exhumed for any reason, but instead developed what was described as a distant chain of suppliers. Oh, jeez. So guess who handled and cared for more than 2,000 corpses in his lifetime? The janitor! Gregor even went on record to say he enjoyed the prospect of dissecting the bodies. Even still, it doesn't seem that Gregor is quite our cadaver collector, but that's when I read this paragraph from the article. According to a Michigan Daily article in 1900, Dr. Nagel, he didn't have a doctorate, just so we're clear, this title was just an honorary one, always claimed never to have participated in these disturbances of the cemetery graves, but he never denied that he was always ready in the name of science to accept any material upon which he could use his dissecting blade. These efforts of his to obtain subjects for dissection forced him to appear several times upon the witness stand, but he always managed to save himself from trouble on these occasions by denying any knowledge of the English language. So this handled 2,000 bodies over 47-ish years and was the only one the court saw fit to attack because he clearly had a significant role in procurement, storage, care, and dissection of them. But he got away with it by pretending not to understand or speak English? I'm fucking dead. I cannot imagine how much money was spent on a lawyer to successfully convince a court of white. Oh wait, a court of white men who owned property, and many of them presumably had an investment in the university. It's always about money! I digress. Do you think Gregor Nagel is the inspiration for cadaver collectors? Whether yes or no, let me know in the comments below. A special thank you to my incredible patrons. And thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, share my video on your Twitter, Facebook, or other social media, and make the leap to become one of my patrons on Patreon. I'll see you next time.